Hi, I'm Jeremy.
And I'm Matt.
Welcome to Livewire Review. We got an exciting one for you today. We have a 2023 Tesla Model Y long range all-wheel drive. I'm pretty excited. How about you?
We don't get our hands on these very often, so I'm looking forward to driving this thing. And, well, I'm not going to drive it. You're going to drive it.
That's
but I'm going
true.
to talk about all the features right now, what I think real quick, and then Jeremy's going to do a drive, and we'll tell you what we think at the end.
Yep, stay tuned.
So why don't we start right here with the walk around. So right up front, there's no engine. This is the dual motor model though, and I mean, equivalent wise, power wise, I'm gonna put all that up on screen right here, horsepower and all those other fun numbers. What do you get in the front? You get a place to fill your wiper fluid and a massive frunk. You have a ton of storage space up here in the front. And I'll talk about the numbers when we get to the back. I love that you do get this. I was just saying off camera though, I don't like that there's no way for me to open this unless I go in the car and hit the button. Nitpicky things, but I like a button outside or maybe a key button. Nitpicky. Other than that though, styling wise, not much change. 22 to 23 stayed pretty much the same on the exterior. I love the sleek lines up here. Now these wheels kind of give me this like death from above, you know, helicopter vibe, but I kind of like the matte black on the blue with the different black accents. It's sharp as heck in my opinion. Coming around the back, same thing. I do like the sweep in this vehicle. It kind of gives it that like hunched, almost sporty SUV feel. And then around back here, we get a ton of space. Now with that second row up, you've got 808 liters of storage space. I think that was the correct number. If not, I will throw it right here. And with them down, you get 2,041 liters of storage in the back. And not to mention, you also get another massive box for storage back here. I mean, that is almost rivaled to the amount of storage in the front, so add that to your total. You can fit a ton of stuff in here, and I'm sure Jeremy will talk about it with his own vehicle where he can pack his entire family of 5 into this for a massive road trip. There's a ton of storage space, a ton of usability, and just a ton of really cool features on this thing. So I think, why doesn't Jeremy hop in this thing? He's the Tesla expert, not me. He's gonna go for a drive, tell you what he thinks, and then we'll come on back for an outro, and we'll kick it off.
Okay, we're gonna check out the back seat of this car now because this is something I really wanted to try out in the Model Y, and I haven't had a chance because we don't have this car long enough. This one that we're sitting in right now might actually be sold by tomorrow, you never know. So one of the reasons you might want to go from a Model 3 to a Model Y is the back seat, but I've heard some rumors that your head actually hits the back. Now, we tried this out. Turns out these seats actually recline. So if you pull this button back here, you can recline them all the way back. But there's a problem with that. I'm 6'1" tall, but because this bar is here, when you recline the seat, my head actually hits this bar. So if you're 6'1" tall, you actually have to take the seat and bring it up. And when you bring it up, my head actually fits inside this car just like it does in the Model 3. No problem at all. And we did test out 2 car seats in the back of here. You cannot fit 3, but 2 does fit comfortably. Okay, here we are in the 2023 Tesla Model Y long range. I'm sorry it's a little dark, but here in Canada it actually starts to get dark right around 5 p.m. And we're about to go through the time change right now. So you have to be careful when you buy one of these cars, especially if you buy it used. They do make changes along the way that you have to be aware of. For example, the one that I'm in right now is a 2023, but it's one of the earlier models, so it still has the parking sensors on it. Not all these cars are going to come with parking sensors. In fact, they've actually changed over to a vision system. So the vision system uses the front and rear cameras to try and estimate the distance between objects when you're parking. Doesn't work quite as well as the parking sensors. If I was to buy a Model Y right now, this is the specific one that I would buy. I would actually consider buying this one because it has black wheels on it. I'll mention later in the video, I actually don't want the 20-inch rims because they are worse for curb rash or for cracking the rim. Unfortunately, the bigger rims from Tesla do have a problem. When you hit a pothole, they tend to crack. So I highly suggest we go for the smaller wheels. Speaking about this car specifically, this one is very interesting because it comes with a giga casting in the front end and the rear end. And that means that the panel gaps are finally fixed on the Tesla products. You don't have to think about going to Tesla and you have to check over the whole car anymore. The build quality has gone through the roof. So as a Model 3 owner, I'm actually quite surprised at one thing with this car. For a heavier car, I think it's around 4,400 pounds for the Model Y. It still drives like a sports car. You can feel the weight a little bit more than you can in the Model 3, but honestly, for such a heavy vehicle, this thing drives beautifully. And I think these 20-inch wheels really do help with the handling quite a bit, because it just feels like it's on rails. It's so planted, and there's no issue with the suspension anymore in these cars. What's new for 2023 is they added something called a comfort suspension to the Model Y, because they were listening to their customers, and their customers were not happy with the suspension that was coming in the Model Y before. And I have to say they fixed that, because this suspension feels incredible. It's soaking up the bumps so beautifully. You can still feel it though. As Matt would say, when we were driving the Model 3, you can feel every bump in the road, but I'm the kind of guy who actually likes that. We've always bought cars that handle really well, because we like to go around corners a little faster than the average person. So you'll hear me talk about this vehicle on the channel quite a bit. It's just because I think this car does everything so well. There's nothing that it doesn't do well. It has extra storage space in the back. It has a huge trunk. It has a hatchback on this, which you don't get in the Model 3. Honestly, the Model 3 would be such a better car if it was a hatchback. You just can't fit the things in a sedan that you can fit in a Model Y. And when it comes to comparing this to things like the RAV4, the Santa Fe, the Tucson, it's about the same size as those vehicles, but you can fit so much more in it than you can in a Tucson or a RAV4, because it has such a huge trunk up front, and it has that storage space in the back that you don't get in other cars. Now, there is a trade-off with that. When you buy a Tesla vehicle, it does not come with a spare tire. There isn't even a compressor or any of that slime. So they want you to use Tesla's roadside assistance, and I've heard horror stories of it taking 2 to 4 hours for that. So make sure you have, let's say, a CAA membership or a AAA membership, or maybe you can go out and buy a spare tire, but honestly, where would you put it? So keep that in mind if you go to buy a Tesla Model Y or a 3, they don't come with a spare tire. But even working at Hyundai, most of the vehicles don't come with spare tires anymore. They only come with a compressor and slime. They're actually removing that from most vehicles nowadays. That's just a trend in the automotive market, I believe. So part of the reason that we recommend this car so much is just that point and shoot aspect of it. If I wanted to go to Prince Edward Island right now, I always talk about the East Coast. Check out my video of our Tesla Model 3 road trip to the East Coast, and you'll see why it's so easy to travel in this car. Unlike the other vehicles that we have reviewed on this channel, this car, when you enter it in the navigation, it'll take you to your destination without you having to think. It'll route you through the superchargers, and on the way to the supercharger, it's going to warm up the battery and prepare it for supercharging along the way. So there's nothing to think about. Even if you get in this vehicle stone cold, it's still going to direct you to the supercharger you need to go to and prepare the vehicle along the way. And that leads me into the heat pump. We've talked about the heat pump before, so I won't talk about it a lot, but it's just so efficient. So let's say we were about to go for a road trip right now and it was minus 15 out. You wouldn't really have to think about it still, because of the way this heat pump works. If you go and drive 200 kilometers to a supercharger and then you stop and you charge, the battery is going to be sitting around 40 or 50 degrees Celsius. So the heat pump is going to draw that heat from the battery, from the motor, and everything. So when you leave that supercharger, everything's already going to be warmed up, and the heat pump is going to draw from that extra heat. So it's actually going to be more efficient for the rest of your road trip. So I would estimate in this vehicle that you can go 2.5 to 3.5 hours of driving before you're going to have to stop again. And every supercharger stop is only about 20 minutes. I found the fastest way to drive this car is to drive from about 10% to 70%. So when you charge up, you go 10 to 70. That's 20 minutes. To go 10 to 80 is about 25 minutes, just for example. And you get about 2.5 hours between your stops that way. Now, I know you can't see this right now, but there's another reason why I like this car so much. Is because the headlights are so good. This particular model did not come with the new matrix headlights, which is basically has little pixels in it, and they're able to cut segments of light out of it. This car doesn't need it. Even with the regular projector lights, they're some of the brightest headlights I've ever seen on a car. And the cutoff is really good. You can see both sides of the road. I'll shoot just some B-roll here of the headlights working. And they have finally fixed the automatic high beams. They're not quite as good at Hyundai as Hyundai's product. Hyundai's product will pick up on taillights of vehicles very well. This one has been programmed to pick up on taillights, and it is better. It's just not 100% perfect yet, but it is so good. When cars are cresting the hill, the high beams do dip right away. So along with that beautiful handling, this vehicle goes 0 to 60 in right around the 5-second mark. You can actually opt to up that performance. If you were to pay about, I think it's about $3,000 Canadian, you can get something called an acceleration boost. Now that would take it down to a 0 to 60 time of about 4.4 seconds if I'm correct, which is about the speed of the Tesla Model 3 long range, which is pretty quick for an SUV. The performance model of this vehicle goes 0 to 60 in 3.7 seconds. So if it's not quite enough performance for you, I do recommend the performance model. Now you can't put small wheels on the performance model because of the larger brakes, but the suspension is just as comfortable as this one. I've driven both of these within a short period of time, and I can say they're both quite comfortable. So there are now 3 versions of this vehicle out. We have the standard range version, which is using the lithium iron phosphate battery, and that one is only rear wheel drive. What we're in right now is the long range all-wheel drive. This is the one that I would have. It runs about 400 kilometers of range. I'll put the accurate figures down below on the screen after I do some math. And I'd say in the winter, you probably get about 300 kilometers of range in this vehicle. If you were to tow a trailer, I think you're around the 200 kilometer mark towing a trailer, especially on the highway. If you're on back roads, you'll probably tow a trailer about 250 kilometers, depending on the weight. So a few of the features for a 2023 model. This one uses the AMD Ryzen processor. So everything that you do on this screen right here is working so much faster than it used to with the Intel Atom processor. And I do have the Atom in my car, so I can say that this one is much snappier. You touch something and it loads right away. Even when you have to reset this car, the reset is so much faster with the Ryzen processor. This one also comes with a heated steering wheel, heated mirrors, and a heated windshield. That's only just down by the wipers, but it is really handy that it has the heated wiper park because they're hidden just below the hood. So it is hard to get ice and snow out of there, and it's going to keep it away if you're in a freezing rain situation. One of the other nice features about this vehicle is the autopilot. The autopilot has gotten so much better over the years with all the different programming updates. This one does not have a radar, it only does vision. But with some of the latest software updates, I can't really tell. It follows vehicles as though it has a radar. Phantom braking is almost non-existent nowadays. If you're going on a really long trip, 1 or 2 times on that trip, you are still going to experience what you call a phantom braking event. But it is really the safety systems of the vehicle just trying to work for you rather than against you. The other day I was driving around and I actually had a cyclist go in front of me, and the camera picked up on the cyclist and slowed down the vehicle. And it has also noticed some people's erratic driving, and it will see if a vehicle is starting to veer off in another lane, it will actually do a nice move over for you, and it will let you know that that vehicle is veering into your lane. So I have to say the safety systems really are improving over time. Another thing I want to mention, Tesla vehicles are some of the safest vehicles on the road. They are Volvo Saab level engineering in their safety department. Not only because of their forward thinking with what they do with the cameras, but because of the actual structure of the car. One of the things you probably don't know is that the glass is the safety structure in this vehicle. Now I looked into this and I thought it was rather funny that they're using the glass for the safety structure. But it turns out when you hit the side of the vehicle over here, the glass will break all at once. And when it breaks all at once, it actually transfers the force across the glass rather than a piece of sheet metal. Whereas a piece of sheet metal will actually fold just in the one spot, so it doesn't dissipate the energy. When this glass cracks, it actually dissipates the energy across the entire roof. You've also may have seen in crash testing that this vehicle is almost impossible to flip over because the battery is down below. Obviously it keeps all the weight centered. What's really nice though is just like the Model 3, because they share most of the same parts, the drivetrain is faced towards the back in the front end of the vehicle and towards the front in the back end of the vehicle. So that means all of the weight is in between the wheels. right where you want it to be. And I think that's one of the big reasons why the handling on this vehicle is so good. So if you're in the market for an electric vehicle and you're choosing between some of the midsize SUVs, I can't recommend this vehicle enough. It does everything you want it to do. If you're going to tow a trailer, you have the entire Tesla supercharger network. If you get a CCS adapter, you can charge on the public charging network. So finding fuel for this vehicle is no issue. It's so efficient because of its coefficient of drag. I'll throw that up on the screen right now because I don't actually have that information available. So honestly, I can't recommend this vehicle enough. If you're in the market for an electric vehicle and you want it to be a mid-size SUV, this just checks all the boxes. It does everything you want it to. It drives beautifully, it handles beautifully, it's fast, it's efficient. The coefficient of drag is so low on this vehicle, and that's why it's so efficient. If you get this with the Gemini wheels, you can easily get the posted range if you're driving on back roads. If you're on the highway, I'd say it's about a 400 to 410 kilometer vehicle, and you also have that safety buffer below zero. So it just makes it so easy for people to drive. When it comes to an A to B vehicle, the family vehicle, you can fit your dog in the back and is smooth and quiet. In the 2023 model, they actually have double pane windows in the front and double pane windows in the back. So it's so quiet in here, it's so refined. Well, I'm just heading back to the dealership now, and I think we'll just wrap up our thoughts on this vehicle. Stay tuned.
So I didn't really get to drive this today, but that's okay. Just kind of crawling all over this. This thing is the Swiss Army knife of electric vehicles. Tons of storage, tons of features, drives like a performance sports car. I mean, can you really go wrong? I know you said you'd buy it today if it was, what's the one feature you said it needed?
Well, I was looking for the 7 seats, to be honest.
7 seats.
Yeah.
Well, what else?
Well, let's see. These wheels, honestly, the 2 big wheels on here, I've heard that these things can hit a curb and you can actually crack the rim. So instead of going for the 20-inch rim, I'd recommend you just get the regular Gemini wheels, and that way you don't run into that issue. It's also a little cheaper for tires too.
No kidding. And you know, 400 estimated kilometers of range, 400 plus. You can go anywhere, do anything. Honestly, if you're in the market for something like this, I think, you know, forgive me, why would you look at the 3? If you're in the market for something a little bigger, just jump right into it.
So when we're looking at comparable vehicles, we had the Aria, we had the ioniq 5, we had the Ford Mach-e, and some of the ones from Kia that are coming out.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a few other on the market. But honestly, none of them really compare to this because you can't just get in those cars and drive. Whereas this one, you just enter something in the navigation. The Tesla superchargers are already routed on the map. You don't have to think. It's the perfect A to B car. It can tow a trailer, and it's just so easy to get everywhere.
Yeah. Well, if you're interested in this, I'm not going to date this video, but you don't have long. So give us a call here at Bourgeois Autos, the Ford dealer specifically in Midland. This is on the lot. It is available for sale now if you're interested. Otherwise, keep an eye out on the channel to see what we're going to be driving next.
Yeah, and if you found this video helpful, think about liking or subscribing to the channel, and thank you for watching.